The November 15th, 2022 meeting of Friends of Wheeling. We are touring 115 14th Street, which is the home that Betsy Sweeny is remodeling, redoing. The house and her work has been featured on the Magnolia network and has gotten views literally all over the country. I keep getting calls from people from California, Washington State, Florida, saying, well, I saw Betsy's video and Wheeling looks like it's really cool. Are there any other houses available? And so, yay, Betsy, congratulations. This is kind of an in-progress tour. She's not finished. We did have a before tour, which was right when COVID hit. And so it was primarily a virtual tour. But that video and those pictures will be on our Facebook page so that you can see the progress that's been made in just a few short months. So this house was probably built for Thomas B McLain, M-C-L-A-I-N, around 1892. He was born in Warren, Ohio, came to Wheeling with his parents when he was just a little toddler. His brother began a family's drugstore business in 1856 in South Wheeling. And Thomas, as a young man, worked as a clerk and an errand boy. He was apparently quite entrepreneurial. He established a penny post office in their store in South Wheeling. And so Thomas at the time was living in North Wheeling. He would walk from North Wheeling to the post office, which of course was in what we now call West Virginia Independence Hall, pick up the South Wheeling mail and take it down to South Wheeling every day, and got a penny per article that was picked up in South Wheeling. So yay for a little kid. That's quite a walk every day too. Thomas and his three brothers, Henry, Robert, and John, later opened the McLain Brothers Drug Store in Washington Hall, which was in the northeast corner of Market and 12th Street. It was described as one of the most up-to-date in the city, and when Washington Hall was torn down, the McLain Drug Store moved across the street. By 1890, the three older McLain brothers had retired from the drug business, and in 1893, Thomas, under his physician's advice, disposed of the drug business. That was around the same time that this house was built. Then Thomas and his son James formed the McLain Dental and Surgical Supply Company, located on the second floor of the McLain Block, which is what it was called at the time, which is the corner of Market and 12th. The company kept, and I'll quote, a large and varied stock of artificial teeth and instruments used in dentistry, surgical instruments, and sick room and hospital supplies such as hot water bottles, ice bags, air pillows, bedpans, syringes, sterilizers, and food warmers. They also made a specialty of renting rolling chairs, invalid beds, air mattresses, chair commodes, and surgical operating tables. A specialty of the firm was truss fitting. They also supplied appliances for deformities of the body, artificial eyes, limbs, arms, and hands, along with instruments to aid the hearing, such as mohair conversation tubes, London hearing horns, hard rubber audio fans, black metal ear trumpets, and invisible eardrums. So they had something for everything that ails you. Thomas McLain lived here for about 10 years and then later moved around town a good bit, and by the time he died in 1924, he was living at 127 Edgwood Street. The next owner was Bernard Horkheimer and his wife Estella. They're listed in the 1903-04 City Directory here. Horkheimer was a German immigrant who was in the wool buying and grocery business with his own brothers and the Baer brothers. And you may know their building, their warehouse building, we now call the Boury Lofts. So that was where they operated. Bernard was killed there. He was accidentally killed by being crushed between railroad cars at the Baer Sons Wholesale Building. He was Jewish. Two of his nieces, who were daughters of his brother Morris Horkheimer, married local rabbis who went on to some renown of their own in later lives. There were several other residents over the years. Frank Swift, was a traveling salesman, was listed here in the 1917 and 1920 City Directories. Then Reverend Pliny Brokan Ferris and his wife Alice. Reverend Ferris was the pastor of the Second Presbyterian Church at the time. And then subsequent owners over the years came down through the years. The Antonucci family lived at this address from 1946 until the late 1980s. Carl Antonucci was a mill worker at Wheeling Steel. It appears that the house and the house that had stood adjacent to this property were vacant beginning in the 1990s. Brian and Stephanie Wilson purchased the home in 2013 and made some much needed structural repairs. At the time I was in the house and there was no kitchen floor. I mean, no floor. There was a 2020, and she's going to describe some of the things that she has done and plans to do. Now, before we do that, I'll make a pitch for Friends of Wheeling. Friends of Wheeling is the local historic preservation organization, and if you are interested in being a member and getting our newsletters once a month, you can send your membership check, and Joanne is taking a picture right now of that. We only ask $10 as membership for dues. Of course, if you would like to donate more, we would welcome that as well. And anything from now till the end of the year will count for 2023. Interestingly, I was just at City Council meeting where Betsy was also, and they announced that the new police station is almost ready. And I asked the police chief if Friends of Wheeling could come and have a tour of that. He said, oh, well, of course he would be glad to lead us on the tour. It's not quite ready to get a hold of him in about a month, but I thought, you know, it's not a historic building, but hey, what the heck? We're the nosiest people in Wheeling. We like, and it hopefully is the only time you'll have to be in the police station. All right, and so I will quit talking now and turn it over to the owner, Betsy.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? We're good? All right. Welcome to my home. As Jean said, I purchased it in very end of May of 2020, and that was, you know, the heart of the pandemic. The interesting thing, or the thing that I'm really passionate about with this house, is not only the beautiful architecture, obviously I love it, but this house kind of helped local banks create a model for how to help people that do not have access to enormous piles of capital renovate residential structures. And so when I purchased this property, it was after 6 months of due diligence, trying to work with banks to figure out how you can fund a property that is not habitable, not mortgageable, not worth anything in the eyes of the bank. And Friends of Wheeling played a really big part of that. So without getting too far in the weeds of those details, ultimately this house had to be a cash acquisition to be even considered worthwhile in the bank's eyes. And then because it was a cash acquisition, my down payment for a real loan was gone. Friends of Wheeling's $25,000 property improvement loan acted as my down payment for a $100,000 construction loan on this property, which was the only way that this property could be habitable. Again, it was not something that you could cobble together with like heart and blood, sweat, and tears. It needed immediate stabilization. So thank you to Friends of Wheeling, and I'm always happy to go into more detail about that process if you know somebody that's interested in trying to take on a property that really has no value in the eyes of a bank, but great value in our hearts. As Jean said, this is just kind of an in-progress tour. So I bought the property in May of 2020, and at that point, this house had not had gutters in 30 years. The roof had been leaking. The bricks were falling out, you know, you name it. And we spent about 6 to 7 months of that first period of ownership repointing the entire structure from about waist height up to the roof line, rebuilding the front of the building. That was done by professionals. The rest of it was me. We redid the roof. We added the gutters. I had, I think, 12 windows that needed to be completely rebuilt from scratch. Structural repairs on each floor in each room. And so that has been the first pretty much year of work. In November of 2021, I moved in, and that is pretty much what you'll see now. I did the kitchen this spring and continued to do the kitchen. And there have been, other projects, but the bulk of the work was done, I would say, from that early part of 2020 up until about the holidays of last year to get it livable. Everything after that is just fun. So throughout the space, I've got some printed out pictures. I tried to match it up to the space you're in to show some befores. You're welcome to look at those. But there's so many of you, I kind of would encourage everyone to just mill about on the first floor, and then we can touch base upstairs.
Great.
And if you have any questions, please shout them at me. Yep. Go ahead.
In order to keep the flow going for our
Oh, yes, I'll take her
visitors
through.
who are online, perhaps you could do the second floor,
Yeah,
and then the rest of us can mill.
perfect. Do you want me to do first or just go straight upstairs?
Let's do first. Yeah.
Okay. Well, where we're standing right now, this is the entry hall. A couple points of interest. For me personally, the fireplace under the stair was a real showstopper and one of the first things I noticed about the home, and something that really sold me on it. Obviously, I'm a dog lover. Marshall's running all around you right now. But in my past life in a museum setting, I actually researched the vernacular of dog housing. So there's multiple layers to why that fireplace is interesting to me. The other thing that I really love is the stained glass transom above the doors. That is not historic. It was done by a local stained glass artist and great friend, Kelly Ahmad of Rust Belt Restoration. We designed it together. We picked colors and geometry that mimicked some of the themes that are present in the extant historic features of the home. So that was a really important moment when that was installed. And then, of course, this staircase is a showstopper. It is pretty unique. The polychrome on the knoll post is original, so you don't often see decorative paint, but we do have it here, as well as on the little sunburst details. And if you don't mind me opening this door, that faux painting is continued throughout the house on the woodwork. So these pocket doors are not mahogany or any expensive wood. They are poplar, and they were faux painted to look like a more expensive species, which is something that you see in historic homes, but is actually typically not done past about 1860 or 70. So it's a little late to be in this house, which was something kind of special and fun. It's got a couple bumps and bruises from the years, but it's actually in remarkably good shape considering. And the fact that it's never been painted over anywhere is really astounding. We do have pocket doors throughout. And coming into our next room, we'll go into the living room. There's so many of you, it's great. So the living room is as it appears. These three windows in the front here, I was missing all three transoms, the entirety of the middle window, half of the one on the right and half of the one on the left. I had a restoration carpenter by the name of Kent reproduce them using traditional methods. He has worked with the Park Service. He was a wonderful asset to the team. And I always like to point out this corner right here, because this corner all the way up to the roof line had to be completely rebuilt by very, very talented masons, because by the time I purchased the property, the bricks from the attic were falling through a hole all the way down to this floor. So that was good to see that turn around. I've got slate mantles throughout. They are also faux painted to look like a more expensive material, such as marble. And you can see that in this little piece right here that broke off. You can see the inside of that slate stone. And this is, what it looked like before. I don't know when it broke, but it gives you a little window into the material. The tile hearths are actually Cambridge tiled, not Wheeling tile, which is an interesting little fact. I'm not sure why they selected that, but that's what they went with. And I've reset a couple of them, and the backs of them are all marked Cambridge, so it appears that he bought everything at once and bought it all from Cambridge. I think that's pretty much it in here. The light fixtures are all new. They're all modern. There were no historic ones in the house when I bought the house, and so I just decided to go with something modern because that's what I like.
What are your plans for the floor?
Sorry?
What are your plans for the floor?
I refinished the floor. You can't tell because everyone has trampled all over it when we were in the filming process. Got terribly scratched, which I don't recommend anyone ever putting their home on TV unless It does good things for wheeling. But yeah, we'll have to redo them again someday. If you want to go into the dining room, this is the dining room. Couple things of note in here. We have the stained glass windows are a popular thing people often ask about. They are not original to the home, nor are they something that I put in. The Wilsons that Jean mentioned were the previous owners, big preservationists in our community. They were very involved in the salvage kind of, it's not a business, but the salvage community in Wheeling. And when the Presbyterian Church in Center Market had to unfortunately be demolished, they saved these windows, and there was a connection between that congregation, as you heard, and my home. And so they felt that this was an appropriate place for them to live, and they fit the window openings almost perfectly. So the casing is all original. It wasn't modified. They just fit right in. You only have a little bit cut off at the top to make them fit. So it was a natural fit. This fireplace is interesting. It was in about 10, 12 pieces in the kitchen closet when I purchased the home. Don't look too close because you can see where we pieced it together. When I purchased this house, there was a different mantle here. But we knew it was not the correct mantle because on the back of one of the pieces, there was a note that said McLain House front bedroom. But when Brian and Stephanie owned this home and they were working on the first floor, they actually got married here. And so they wanted a mantle for their wedding. And there was one that was intact and there was one that wasn't. And so they put the one that was in better shape here. When I ran the gas lines for these fireplaces, the mantle had to be taken down anyway because there was some wood behind it, whatever. And at that point, I made the decision that if we knew where the right ones go, we carried the other one upstairs and we started piecing this one together here. There's a couple pieces that are probably missing, may never find them, but it's good enough for me. Other stuff, we have a pretty built-in that I really love. It's got the wavy glass, and above the sort of bar cart area, I have one of my 3 Tom Griffith paintings, who I just absolutely love. That was the first one I bought, and it shows a family scene at Thanksgiving. And I love the way he depicts wheeling, so I'm very happy to have those in my home. Other thing, which I won't show you behind this door too much because it's full of junk, this door has a spring-loaded hinge. No, close it. But because of that hinge, we know it's always meant to close on its own, which is an indication that it's a butler's pantry door, because if you were carrying things, you wouldn't want people to see kind of what was going on behind that door. And so it was kind of fun to discover that. We'll come into our foyer here. I'm going to do a dog check. Anyone know where he is? Great, awesome. Let's start in the kitchen. We'll go back to the kitchen. So this is my kitchen. It is what I would say about 85% complete. I started this in the spring. We did all custom cabinetry to basically, this was a wall. So this was a contiguous wall, plaster wall. At some point there had been some kind of doorway into the basement that was added later. And then this doorway is the butler's pantry that winds around behind this wall and pops out in the dining room. So I had the whole wall taken out to put it back in, but to be made of cabinetry. It's shiny because I haven't done the final coat of paint yet, because I haven't committed to it yet. But we have the final coat of paint. I have yet to pick my countertops, so I have to pick my countertops and have those installed. But beyond that, and install baseboards. But beyond that, we're pretty much done. Now, this floor is not original to the home. This is the floor where Jean said was in the basement. It really was. And from about that doorway by the piano back, so about half the dining room and all of this room, all of the floor joists are replaced. It was that collapsed. And that was the work of Brian and Stephanie. This piece behind you is interesting. This was also in about 15 pieces back in that corner of the butler's pantry. It's probably the only piece of original cabinetry, butler's pantry cabinetry from this home. You can see it has the same faux painting as a lot of the other elements in the house. And I had Brandon and Melissa Holmes with, do we know their company name? Refinish, Restore, that's terrible. But they did a beautiful job piecing this thing back together because it had to be completely taken apart to be resurrected. And I really kind of based the whole kitchen around putting that back in its rightful home.
Who put your floor in? Because it looks old.
Brian and Stephanie Wilson did when they owned this house. After they picked the floor out of the basement, they put this down, and it's very appropriate for the era of the home. They did a great job. They were really, really great preservationists, and we remain friends to this day. The last thing, the ceiling, which you probably noticed, is pressed metal ceiling, which Wheeling was at one point the largest manufacturer of what we call tin ceilings. And mine was pretty much intact, but this whole section in the back, the middle, and a piece over here and over here were missing because of years of water damage and rust. Everything was long gone. And what we did was local metal artist Jeff Forster worked with me, and we cast copies of the ceiling tiles. So what he did was he cut them out, brought them down, and when you have that piece of metal, on the back side of it is like the mold. And so you coat it with grease, and then you line it with like a fiberglass mesh and an epoxy resin, and pour that over the mesh, and it kind of all squishes in, replicates that form, and then after an hour or two, you pop it out, and we just put it right back into the ceiling, and once it's painted, you can't tell. I mean, if you look, you can tell, but it's a difficult thing with tin ceilings. There's only about 3 manufacturers left in the country that are willing to make replica tin ceilings, and all of them told me, your 8 to 10 tiles are not worth our time. So to have 8 or 10 tiles done in metal by a company would have been upwards of $5,000. I think we did this for about $500. So, I think that's it in here. Oh yeah, yeah. So the ladder, because I wanted to capitalize on this vertical height, we put cabinets the whole way across, and this ladder hangs here. And when I want to take it down, I just lift it off, put it on. It slides right across, and it's been a total game changer. Like really, really helpful. Because there's not a lot of storage in these old houses, so that's that.
Did you paint your woodwork throughout the house? Was it original?
The woodwork that is painted was painted, and the woodwork that was not painted remains unpainted. And I think that originally that is how this house, oh, excuse me, I have somebody else coming in. Sorry.
You all right?
Come on in. Whoop. Oh, you know him.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, will you just mind spinning that walk so he doesn't run away? Thank you. Yeah. We have a couple more guests. I think that was everything in this kitchen. Oh, I was going to tell you about the woodwork. So I believe in this house, because of the faux painting on the doors and the interior portions of the windows, I do think that historically these were painted first, and when I've kind of scratched down, it looks like the first color was in the cream family, and then at some point they did a whole faux wood paint that isn't that, that was layered on top of the cream, and then there was a lighter cream, and then like a tan, and then...
So originally they would have painted them?
Yeah.
Or would they have been? Okay.
I believe so, and there's this idea that woodwork was always stained or never painted, and that's not always true. A lot of times, if you had something cheaper like poplar, you really don't want people to know you have poplar. So you either paint it or you faux paint it to look like something more expensive. Thank you, thank you. I'm a really big proponent of letting your house tell you what it needs, and so while this wasn't my first round of samples, but I wanted something that worked with the character-defining feature of this house, which is this kind of tan trim with faux painted woodwork, because
Very elegant. I like it.
that's what the house is. It's never going to be a shiny, white, crispy, bright place. Like, it's Victorian. Yeah. And the ladder will be painted eventually, as will a few other things, but I just can't decide. And then coming through here, this is going to be kind of like a walk by. This is the half bath, the guest bath. It is not well, it's old, but it's not original. So originally, this is where the service stair would have terminated. And if you pop your head in, you can kind of see the angle of the upper part of the stair and then the landing. In the 50s, the Antonucci family that Jean mentioned, they ended up renting the upper floors as like boarding house rooms, and so they decided to move their life onto the first floor, took out that lower part of the stair, added a full bath so that they could make this their sort of apartment. And while I miss the service stair, it is very practical to have that half bath there. Oh yeah, thanks. Come on, we're going upstairs. Thank you. Again, we have the polychrome on the Knoll post. This is all the original finish. This paint has been painted over a few times, but I think because everyone recognized what a pain it would be, they've kind of let this go, and same with this.
On your Instagram, these almost look like metal.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like them, and I'm in a lot of houses, and this was one of those things.
These metal, they almost look like springs or something.
Yeah, they're really interesting, and one of my favorite things about the Victorian era is, at that time, everything is becoming available more widely. And so if you were building a house, it's a Victorian, but that owner may say, it's a Victorian, but I kind of like Egyptian stuff. Or it's a Victorian, but I kind of like the classic Greek. Or I want cherubs, or I want Asian influence. And people have preferences within that. I really like this more naturalistic and geometric ornamentation over, some of the cherubs and flowers you see in other Victorians.
Oh, you're coming up?
I'm coming up. We might want to swap around a bit. I'm going to go into the front room. Marshall. So this is the main bedroom, the primary bedroom. At the time that I purchased this house, it was absolutely positively the worst room in the house. And I say that about several of them, but I really mean it in here. Here's the photo. It was very scary. I will just give this to you. There's another one. This is right there. And again, this was where we had all of the windows. All 4 of these windows were nothing but shower doors and plexiglass tacked into holes. Everything was falling down. Everything was falling out. This is that corner that had to be completely rebuilt. And this patch in the floor is where the bricks from the attic fell through and through and through and hit the living room floor. And it was the day my dad was here for the first time. So as you can imagine, he loved this project. What else to say about this space? So, historically speaking, it was very common to have your main bedroom plus another room plus a little room to the side. You always say these little rooms are like over stair halls in old houses. And there's actually a doorway over there that indicated that I think this was originally walled off, but this room had a room behind it. So the master suite was enormous when this house was built. And all the kids were probably in the attic. It's just very interesting the way they divided space back in the day. For me, I knew I wanted the bed just to be on its own, able to be closed off, quiet and peaceful. And then up here is kind of like the informal living room. This is where we spend most of our time and hang out, and that's why we have the big TV. And next stuff in this room is eventually to refinish the floors. And then I'm going to run crown molding the whole way around because there's still some little stuff that needs to happen. What else? Oh, the fireplace behind you is the dining room fireplace that was meant to be up here. That's the McLain House front room fireplace that had the note on it. I had 2 college football players carry that up the stairs, and they were struggling. It's very, very, very heavy.
So is this wheelie tile?
It is not. All the tiles from Cambridge. As far as we can tell, they all are. I think that one is printed Cambridge as well. And I haven't set it yet because I haven't decided on a pattern yet, but that is... No, so there's no gas on the upper floors because per code you're really not supposed to put gas in bedrooms. People do, but I didn't. So we've got electric units upstairs and gas downstairs.
Betsy,
Excuse
are you
me?
piecing the trim back together, the woodwork, or is it all here?
It wasn't all here. Sorry, I'm doing
Okay.
it. Oh, you're there. You're good. So the trim, I can kind of address that from here. The trim you'll see where the areas are unpainted, I had it replicated. So Danoon Lumber up in Burgles, Ohio, has the ability to recreate any molding profile that has ever existed. You take a piece of your original, they cut it in section, they basically photocopy it, then draw it in AutoCAD, create a knife, for the woodwork, and then they can run as many linear feet of your profile as you could ever want. So I think I had 1,200 feet of it made, which sounds like a lot, but it really doesn't go that far. So yeah, I am piecing it together, and I had the casing and the baseboard recreated. And so if anybody has one that matches, just ask for the Betsy knife, and they can make it for you. It exists. Don't pay twice. Oh, this is this hallway. I can.
Let me see.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And not too much has changed in here other than we needed a ceiling and we needed plaster and we needed walls, and so we put them up. We haven't refinished the floors yet. Coming in here is the bathroom. This was in pretty decent shape when we started things. The wall was originally right here. So this was a bathroom. The wainscot is original, but how they fit a bathtub, a toilet, and a sink in here, I'll never understand. So the wall, we pushed it back to accommodate a full-size shower and a toilet, replicated the rest of the paneling to fit that in. And, there was a lot of issues with like water and mold and, structural repairs and ceiling and walls and stuff, but it all in all wasn't too bad. The bathtub came with the house. Just put the vanity in a couple weeks ago. Tiled the shower, and that was about it.
You have an awful lot in a small space.
It doesn't usually feel this small, but when it's full. And then this is more of a pop your head in room. This is my laundry room. I didn't even realize the door was open, but there you have it. It was moldy and gross, and now it's not, and that's about all I can say for it. The whole back corner of the house didn't have gutters. All the bricks were falling out, and so we repointed, rebuilt, all new drywall, all new plaster. We did keep the windows in here, didn't have to rebuild those. And then these floors were so far gone, there was absolutely nothing left to refinish, so we just tiled them. And this would have historically been a back bedroom, but because the bathroom borrowed some space, now it is a laundry room closet. Excuse me, guys. You can pop your head in here. There's really nothing to see. This is the back bedroom, and it's where I store everything while I work. We were going to tackle this room, but I need to run all new electrical to the third floor, and this room actually provides excellent access to almost every corner of the third floor, weirdly, and so this will be the last thing that happens because it gives me such good access to the third floor. And if anyone has a flashlight, they're welcome to go onto the third floor, but because I don't have said wiring, you won't be able to see anything.
Question for you.
Yes.
The mirror in this room almost looks like a bathroom.
Because he was on City Council,
The mirror. Oh, yes.
and that's what I was.
So this mirror, because people didn't have big vanities and wash their face and have a 10-step skincare routine, very likely there would have been a wash basin here. And this would have been where you just kind of freshened up, maybe had a glass of water on the nightstand type of deal, kept some things.
Sweet.
And yeah, that's about it.
Does it open? Does it work?
It does open. It's just got junk in it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so not a bathroom, but just a wash area in the.
Yeah. Very common to just have a kind of pedestal thing in every room, just for convenience. This is the only closet in the house.
One
Yeah, I've got the whole back room just piled, and then we've got one closet, little tiny, and it was tinier. So when this wall went up, we pushed it out 6 inches to accommodate a full hanger, because the original closet was about this deep, because it only needed to be as deep as the chimney was proud. So we put, this wall was always level and like in one plane. We just pulled that plane out 6 inches. Shortened the hearth up a little bit.
All right, Betsy, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate. We will stop the broadcast right now, but then
Right.
you can chat with other people as you walk through.
Great.
And join us for future events, and please help support Friends of Wheels.